Do you think that mindfulness, meditation, yoga, all these things can become part of the healthcare routine for doctors and help them better manage their own regimes for their self care?
Yeah, I think these are very important tools, and there's many tools to get to maybe the same place. But when, mindfulness is really just, paying that attention and intention in one certain thing and not being consumed by all the thoughts from yesterday and what happened and all the things in the future that haven't happened that we're catastrophizing. So it's really paying attention to the now, to the present moment. And what that does is it gets rid of that anxiety and the stress, because stress cannot coexist, in the present when you're just focused in the now. So these are important tools to learn so we can stop the rumination, or the fear, the worry, and get us out of the stress response and get us more into the now, the rest, the digest, the present moment. So in that sense, it can stop the stress cycle, which is going to be a key component to stopping, burnout, anxiety, depression, and all these feelings that we get. So I think mindfulness can be helpful. I mean, yoga, it depends how we define it. I mean, if we're talking about just the poses, the asanas, that's one part of yoga. But yoga truly means, as you may know, it means to unite. You're uniting basically the mind, body, soul all together, and with that higher kind of spiritual sense. So it's a unification, a uniting of your spiritual self. And I do think that a lot of burnout can be basically a spiritual crisis. It could be deviating ourselves from a spiritual sense, from a grander connection to the divine, to a grander connection to our purpose or to a service. So when we do reconnect with these ideas that are found in yoga, not in the poses, but in what yoga means, I think it can really get us back to a better place. So those people, whether physicians or not, that are feeling these stressors, and mindfulness can be a very good tool. Yoga, asanas, exercise, movement. Part of asanas is that movement of your body. It is that breathing, which helps to kind of clear out all this worry and negativity and blocked energy. That's what, asanas, yoga poses are doing. They are moving the energy, these emotions, which are energy and motion, that maybe get stuck in a certain area, and you're moving them with the movement of the asanas and with the breathing. So breathing is essential movement. Again, whether you're doing yoga or you're running or you're biking, this is really important. And, part of that too is being outside, going on a hike, on a swim, something outdoors is really helpful to get us out of that stress cycle. So all these tools are trying to get us out of the stress cycle, that cortisol release, and get us back to that rest, digest, parasympathetic sort of nervous system where we're calm and, again, we are out of the stress cycle.
You are a mother and medical practitioner at the same time. So, can you share some personal anecdotes or personal experiences that have helped you and evolve on this journey of personal care?
Yeah, I think it's important to breathe because little kids are going to test your patience, and, they don't want to do things. They don't want to brush their teeth. They don't want to do that. So sometimes it's just about stepping back and just breathing and not fighting or resisting the other force, which may be a little 5-year-old, but just, really just taking a step back, having some flexibility, realizing maybe not everything has to be exactly how or when you want to do it. Obviously, with a caveat, you want to keep your kids safe, but, just really just stepping back and kind of picking your battles and realizing what's worth, fighting and what is just not worth, sort of the fighting, just, acknowledging the other human being, which is your, child, and realizing, their own divinity, their own personality, and, letting them sort of grow as well and not encroach them, and, just acknowledging what is also important for them, even though they're in small packages, they're little, but they do have a lot of wisdom. They have a lot of things to teach us. Many times they're our greatest teachers. So whether we're trying to learn, patience or flexibility, these are some of the gifts they can give us. So we need to, really pay attention to that.
Amazing. And you have started something called Physician Coach Support. So can share some more inspiration of starting this and how it's going? What do you do in it?
Yeah, so physiciancoachsupport.com is a free and confidential platform for any physician. Basically, you come and you find your time zone and you find what's available for appointments, and you can make a free and confidential Zoom appointment with a physician who's also a certified life coach. And what we do is just help any physician, discuss things that may be coming up for them. It could be work related, it could be family related, personal, goal related, anything. And it's just there for support. It's not meant to be obviously ongoing coaching sessions, because every time you come is a different person most likely, but it's really just there to help you and sometimes just get you out of being stuck or in a rut or just ruminating and just seeing things in a different light, which is what a lot of coaching is, just really sort of flipping that script that is keeping you stuck and realizing there's likely a different way to see how things are happening, not to you but for you. And that can just be helpful again to get you in a path then to realize, what do you need to do? What are other ways you can look at things? Maybe you also need a therapist as well, and that could be a helpful realization. And it's just something that is done non-judgmentally. It is confidential. And we've been there for about a couple of years now and just really getting good feedback that is helpful for those that use it, that it really sometimes can be, life-changing because they were stuck and they couldn't figure out what to do. And, it's just there for support. And it was started really because of my own, burnout and trying to give back and be of service and keep hope alive, that there's always hope, that there is always, a better place, a better time, and that the suffering, the frustration you're feeling actually is temporary. It's not going to be forever. It feels like it is, but we have to realize everything's temporary, whether it's our happiness, our sadness, our frustration, things are not permanent. And we can sort of maybe learn some of these tools we talked about, whether it's mindfulness or some meditation, where we sort of step back a little bit, get a bigger perspective on what's happening, and start observing these thoughts, these emotions, and realize we are not these thoughts, we are not these emotions, but we're just observing them and we don't get sort of wrapped up. So there's many ways to learn these tools, and again, some of them can just be coaching, some of them can be diving more into this mindfulness or meditation or any yoga, things like that, but they're just tools to help us again get to that next step in a better place.
That's an amazing initiative that you have started, and I would like to learn more about it. I will go through the website and have a separate discussion on that. But you mentioned about burnout. Can you help our listeners really understand how do you define burnout, and what are some of the misconceptions that are surrounding this pervasive problem that is often neglected and not given the attention it really requires, and it's out there.
Yeah, so this is for anybody. I mean, this is not just physicians or anybody in the medical field. I mean, a burnout is really a pandemic in itself in all fields, whether you're in tech industry, whether you're in the C-suite, whether you're a teacher. I mean, burnout is really rampant. And again, the way that the World Health Organization defines it is just chronic unmanaged stress. There's other ways to define it. It could be either the Maslow inventory and, really defining different parts of work, like a mismatch between the employer and employee and their expectations. And it could be maybe too overwork, overload. It could be not feeling that you are valued. I mean, there's many components to it. But the important thing is that there is perceived stress, whether it's how you feel the workplace, you feel value, there's too many things that you have to do. And that perceived stress, which again, stress is really how we react to the situation. And that is very subjective, because for one person, it could be very stressful, and for the other person, it could not be stressed at all. You can think about it, for example, a roller coaster. For one person, it can be terrifying, but for the other person, it's the best thing that they can do, on a Saturday. So it's the same situation, but how we perceive it is what causes our internal state. So whatever we are perceiving as something stressful, that additive, cumulative, keeps going, starts really changing our physiology. So what's happening inside our body is every single cell is getting bathed with stress hormones, which affect every single part of your body. I mean, there's nothing that does not get affected. You're going to get insomnia. You're not going to sleep well. You're going to grind teeth. You're going to get chest pain, reflux, indigestion. pelvic pain, even infertility, and even cancers can happen from chronic stress because you're in a state of decreased immunity. So it's going to obviously change your immune system, and then that puts you at risk for all these things. So we're always just sort of in this chronic stress state, and it starts affecting our body. And I think the misconception is that stress is normal, that we all live with it, that how can we not have stress? But the reality is that we can live without stress. We need to find time, cultivate time to do activities, whether it's something you enjoy, maybe it's reading, maybe it's swimming, maybe it's prayer, maybe it's writing, to do things that's going to stop the stress cycle, help us find a bigger gap between that stimulus and that reaction. That's what, all these practices do. They just give you a bigger time frame from when you hear something, and instead of being triggered and start yelling or get angry, you can put a little bit more of a pause and a space, and then decide how you're going to act and what you're going to say or do. And so I think, spending that time every day, just like you brush your teeth, is something you do daily, can be very helpful to stop the stress cycle. And many of the misconceptions too is that, we just are not paying attention. We are, again, disconnected to our body. We're not paying attention to those pains or aches. Maybe that sugar you can't control, one of the reasons could be stress. And so what's causing all these manifestations in your body is paying attention and realizing it's not normal and there's a better way, but you need to cultivate some activities or time to stop the stress cycle.
I totally align with that and agree with you on this. And we've already discussed that burnout really impacts the overall patient care. You shared it in the very starting of it. But according to you, what are some of the strategies that healthcare organizations can bring into practice, which can help in combating the negative effects of burnout out there?
Yeah, I think it starts with actually asking, whether it's nurses or, anybody that works in the hospital or physicians, what do they need? Like, it's not common that you see, whether it's the administration or anybody coming to see what is needed, because that actually may be very different depending on the setting you're in. Maybe the emergency department has different challenges than, the radiology department. So, understanding is not all one size fits all, and that they each have different challenges, and speaking to them, coming down and saying, okay, what is needed? And not just coming to speak, but it's like having a follow-up and a plan and a goalpost of like, what are we going to do to address some of these pain points? So I think it's really important to speak to the teams, the physicians, the nurses, and ask what is going on, what are their needs, and that's an important starting point. Because without information, then you can't change anything, you can't measure anything because you don't know what's happening. And just having these anonymous surveys that are done and nothing gets done from it, I think that's a waste of time. I mean, there's so many surveys about burnout, but then so what? You find out, and then what is a follow-up? I mean, I think they're very sort of empty, and they're kind of useless if you don't do anything with it. So not just anonymous surveys, but just really coming on the ground and speaking to people, I think would be a lot more helpful. And then apart from knowing what they need is, it's important to build trust, build activities that foster a sense of belonging, that you are appreciated, that you matter. I mean, I think some of these are the things that we see, that people don't feel they're appreciated, that their work matters, that what they do is important. And when you lose these basic core needs, you start also, just getting depressed and feeling anxious and feeling, so what? You start feeling like your work doesn't matter. You start becoming depersonalized. The other person, patient, is just a diagnosis or a number. So you start losing your purpose because, again, you don't feel that the culture is one where you are appreciated, you're worthy, and that you matter. So these are basic needs that I think are missing in the culture of many, hospitals or facilities. And also, doing activities where you foster this community. Community is so important. Another big pandemic is just loneliness in the world. So, that's also at the workplace. You could be surrounded by a lot of people in medicine, ER, here or there, but it's actually could be very lonely. People could be very siloed and in different places all the time, and you never have that sense of belonging or community. That's an important, again, basic need and core that is important for any human being, but especially in the workplace or in medicine.
You really brought out a very important point around that loneliness, and that's one of the biggest pandemic the human race is looking at in the coming future. I would like to really understand, as a medical practitioner, how do you really combat loneliness, or how do you really look at really making the most of the time that you get with yourself in between the numerous surgeries or numerous appointments that you might have in a day? One, how can doctors really make the most of it? Two, are there any practices being followed in the US or anywhere in the globe that you're aware of which gives them a community support during that time?
Things change a lot too, especially with COVID, because then everybody was, on their own. These physician sort of lounges that we had closed, all that changed. So then people were even more isolated. But I think now that, COVID has sort of passed for so many years and we're almost back to normal, I think this is an important thing to reestablish, these places where in between surgeries or in between seeing patients, you can, sit down and maybe speak to other physicians or other people, because I think that is important, where you're just not just siloed and independent, but there's places where you can gather and eat and speak with other people. But again, not just these physician lounges, but also, again, activities that the workplace that you are at, the practice you're in, you do activities where people maybe get together to have dinner or have, again, a fun activity with children or kids. And also acknowledging, we're not just physicians without families, that we do have families, that these activities should not always just be for the physicians, that, you're already not spending a lot of time with your family, so it would be nice to bring them to these activities, get to know other, kids, parents, this and that. So activities that incorporate the whole person and not just one facet of us, which is workplace, I think is important. And also, so many of meetings, retreats they call them, are done 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m., weekends, when this is, again, time that we should be taking care of ourselves, maybe actually sleeping, being with family, and they're just overtaken by all these work meetings. And I think it's essential to realize how much is this really, truly, truly needed, how many of these meetings, should be done at this time frame, and cutting back on just so much unnecessary things that we sometimes have to do. And, we just do it because that's what we used to do, but we don't sort of have that mindfulness again, step back and realize, is this necessary? How is this helping? How is this contributing to a goal overall? And do we have to keep some of these activities? So either adding ones that can build and foster community or belonging, but also get rid of things that may not be needed, and think about, what do we really need? And just because we've done it before, do we still have to continue to do so? A lot of the things, I think, run on autopilot. We just do because we've always done. And it's important to, again, pause, stop, think, and kind of align with goals and purpose. And things that we do should be aligned with, again, the wellness overall of everybody. And I think when you start with that premise, we could probably get rid of a lot of things that are not needed.